certain that we weren't going to build a company, and that if a company was ever going to be built out of what we were doing, that someone much more qualified than me would do it. But I just built it because I wanted the product to exist at Harvard, where I was. And within a couple of weeks, about 2/3 of the students at Harvard had signed up and were using it. And we started getting these requests emailed into us from students mostly at neighboring schools, MIT, BU, BC, other Boston area schools, asking for us to expand it. And that's when I went from just working on it myself to getting my roommates and some friends involved. Who's like, all right, I can't expand this by myself, I need some help. And then it kind of just got out of control from there. At the end of my sophomore year, I moved out to Silicon Valley. And the idea at the time was still not to start it as a company, but just that there are all these companies that come from Silicon Valley, so I figured I had something to learn. And my intention was to go back to Harvard at the end of the summer. But Harvard has this great program where you can take as much time off as you want. So I figured at the end of the summer, things were going pretty well, I'll take a term off. And then things kept on going well, I'll take another term off, and then a year, and then a couple years later, I'm like, all right, I guess I'm not going back to school. But it was lucky for me to go to Silicon Valley because it is an epicenter for technology. And I knew nothing about getting started. I knew nothing about setting up a company, I knew nothing about hiring great people, I knew nothing about raising money, and a lot of that stuff, there really are just a lot of resources in Silicon Valley that help out. But what we see now is that you can really build a company like this anywhere in the world. And if I were doing it again, I probably wouldn't choose Silicon Valley. There's a lot of upsides and there's a lot of downsides to doing it. One of the big things that we try to do is we have this development platform so that all of the people who use Facebook can use a lot of different apps, right? And not just the stuff that we develop. And there's actually more than 1 million people around the world building apps. And there's one company here based in Provo, Family Link, that has this application We're Related that has more than 1 million users, right? So you can build really meaningful things no matter where you are. Any city, any country in the world. I think there are some good things about Silicon Valley, but you definitely don't have to be there.
Well, that's great. I'll tell you, we expect you to move up here as soon as you can. Actually, we'd love it.
Flying in last night, driving past the mountains, it did occur to me that I was coming here on a Friday afternoon and could hang out for the weekend and stay to go sleep. But I think my girlfriend, who's a medical student in the Bay Area, probably wouldn't be psyched if I moved to Utah.
I'm not so sure that's that good of an excuse. Let me ask you this question. This is one person on Facebook. Is management or marketing more important in predicting the success of a new business? With your experience, I'd be interested to see your point of view there.
Well, so by management, do you mean people? Because I think that's probably the biggest predictor. There are lots of different social networks that got started. In any given industry, there are lots of different folks trying to do the same thing. What made Google the best search engine, right? Was it that they thought of the idea of a search engine and no one else did? No, I think that they just did a much better job of executing on that. And I think a lot of it comes down to the people. Now, I think one thing that gets blown out of proportion in our culture is the emphasis on the single person or the couple who are running something. So, a lot of people might know who I am, but the success of Facebook is really all about the team that we've built, right? And I think in any company that's going to be true. And one of the things that we've really focused on at Facebook is keeping the company as small as possible, right? One of the things that I'm really proud of is that we're able to serve so many people, and it's more than 500 million people now, 500 million. But the company only has around 2,000 people. And if you think about that, that's kind of staggering. And how do you do that? Right, I think the answer to that question is you make sure that every person that you add to your company is really great. And I think that there are some companies that get built with that culture in mind and that get started by good people. And when you see those, I think you can tell that those are going to succeed even if it's a really crowded space or if it's an industry that a lot of other companies are competing in.
Okay, these three over here look pretty bright to me. So I like to say from BYU. There's a lot of others here who want to be with Facebook someday. Scotty,